Okay. Hello everyone, welcome to my video of today where I take you through climate change risk management. My name is John Sekajugo. I'm a lecturer at Mountains of the Moon University in the Faculty of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences, the Department of Environment, Natural Resources and Tourism. So I'm going to take you through climate change risk management, which is one of the very important courses that many learners and students who are in the fields of agriculture, in the fields of agroecology, in the fields of environment and natural resource management that need in order to address the existing environmental challenges, the existing agricultural production challenges, understanding that now climate change is a global phenomenon. It's one of the challenges that is affecting each and every sector across the world, but also here in Uganda in particular. So therefore, it is very important for all the people, all the learners, all the students that are doing work related to environment and natural resource management, that are doing work related to agroecology, agricultural production, and all other related sciences to understand these challenges that are posed by climate change, and also get to know how to manage the risks associated with the climate change impacts. So in today's video, there are three main objectives that we want to achieve. And the first one is to equip you with the history and fundamentals of climate change and its risk management, but also to acquaint you with the methods and tools for climate change risk management. What are those tools and methods that you can use or go through to be able to manage the risks associated with climate change, and to provide you with the skills and knowledge to develop climate change resilience agro ecosystems because of the impacts of climate change that are increasing, and of course because of the increasing exposure, it's almost a common norm that every sector, everything that is being done now has to incorporate climate change risk management aspects and approaches. And you need these skills to be able to, when you are designing your projects, when you are designing your development programs, to account for the likely impacts of climate change and the risks they impose to your projects that you are developing, but also be able to find ways of how to manage these risks. There are mainly also three outcomes, and at the end of this video, when we finish all the videos, I expect that you will be able to explain the history and fundamentals of climate change risk management. You will be able to demonstrate the different technologies, that is methods and tools for climate change risk management, and you will be able to develop and implement climate change risk management projects. So for those who are now watching this video, it's one of the very many others that I will be producing. I will encourage you, once you've watched this one, look out for the next videos that I will be also producing, for you to be able to get all the ingredients of climate change risk management, for you to be able to get the whole comprehensive presentations about climate change risk management. So to begin with, I will take you through first briefly about climate and how the Earth is made up. The Earth is broadly composed of three main climate zones, one of them being the tropical zone, where most of us, especially in Uganda, are located. And this is the region just near the equator, the region that is about 23 degrees, 24 degrees around the equator. And then away from this, we have the subtropical, which just includes the temperate region that stems beyond 23.5 degrees to around 67 degrees in the north and south. And then also you have the polar zone. But each of these zones is broken into subzones and has distinct or different weather features that determine plant and animal life. These features that make up these zones determine what is likely to thrive in these particular regions. And therefore, when we are understanding climate change risks and what they pose, it is important to understand the zones where we are, the type of climate we have, the type of weather we have, and therefore be able to know the likely plants and animal life that we are likely to find in these zones. So there are different processes on Earth that control or that are controlled by radiant energy from the sun, and this energy and heat that is created by the sun causes different processes within the different components of the Earth. For example, the oceans and the atmospheric air and water saturations will depend on this energy that is coming into the Earth, into the process, into the atmosphere, but also the trade winds and estuaries that are prevailing within these particular regions. For example, in the north of the equator, the trade winds will blow from the northeast and meet those that are coming from the southeast at the intertropical convergence zone, which is also just around the equator. And this causes the air to move upwards as it cools. You have then the rain coming, or the rain clouds forming and eventually resulting into the rain. Here I just include some simple illustration that shows what I've been talking about. So down you will see around the equator you have the trade winds, which I'm talking about, the ones that are running from the southeast and those that are coming from the northeast, meeting around the equatorial low or the intertropical convergence zone, which also now create storms and storms that will eventually impact on the environment. So the westerlies, as you can see, blow from the southwest and northwest in the north, and the south hemispheres respectively. So all these have impact on the climate and what is likely to prevail within these regions, and therefore also control the kind of life that is likely to prevail within these regions. Now, allow me to take you through some of the concepts and terminologies that we need to understand if we must understand very well what climate change is and the risks it imposes on the different sectors. And one is climate and weather. Sometimes many students, many learners, many people confuse weather and climate. Many times they talk of weather when they are meaning climate. So weather refers to the short-term conditions of the atmosphere, and that is to say measured in terms of temperature, in terms of precipitation, in terms of humidity, wind, and many others. However, climate is the average of weather patterns, of course, such as temperature, precipitation, also humidity, wind, and many other seasons that are loosely referred to as climate normal. And by definition, it is the average weather conditions of a place observed over a long period of time. And here usually we talk of 30 years and more. So while weather is just the short-term conditions of the atmosphere or a place, or what we took sometimes the average weather conditions of a particular place, climate is the average of weather conditions that is observed for a longer period of time. So for weather, it's for a shorter period of time, but climate should be observed, or that average should have been observed for a longer period of time, and understood and taken to be the average normal or average normal weather conditions of the place. So that then when there are changes in this known normal, we can talk of climate change. Apart from weather and climate, of course, there are many other aspects, but here let me first discuss or explain to you what controls the climate of a particular place, and what are those elements or ingredients we need to take care of and understand when we are understanding the climate of a particular place. So different climate zones, as I talked about, are distinguished from each other by their prevailing temperature and precipitation in most cases. Of course, I've talked about other climate variables. I've talked of humidity, wind, and everything. But in most cases, when we are understanding the climate of a particular place, many times we look at the temperature and the precipitation, which have a natural range and variability within these zones. So the climate of a particular place is a function of a number of factors. There are several factors that will determine and control the climate of a place. And one of them, of course, is the latitude and its influence on solar radiation. So how far or near is the place from the equator will determine the kind of temperature, the heat that is being received, and therefore eventually the climate and the conditions of that particular place. But also the air masses will influence the climate of a place. Of course, when they combine then with the prevailing winds and the rest, will determine how the conditions will be in that particular place. You have seen sometimes when you are in a place and say, this place is always windy, it's always cold and everything. So sometimes the prevailing air masses within that particular place will have an influence of the likely climate of that place. The location of the global high and low pressure zones will also have an influence, but also the heat exchange from the ocean currents. So depending on the direction of the ocean currents and the winds and where they are going, you will have the climate of that particular place in a certain way. Many of us sometimes when we want to relax, you want to go near the ocean, you want to get an equal and say, there's always a cool breeze there. And when you move away from the ocean, you are no longer having the same feeling. It's because of some of these heat exchanges that are prevailing around the ocean, and the direction of the ocean currents will influence the climate of a particular place. And then away from that also, the distribution of the mountain barriers and patterns of the prevailing winds will have an influence. If, for example, an area is located on the leeward side of the mountain, the kind of rainfall pattern in that place will not be the same as the area that is on the windward side of the mountain. So if you are in a place that is mountainous, that has a lot of mountains, on one hand they will act as barriers of wind and therefore influence the kind of rainfall that is going to be received in that particular place, and on the other hand it will influence also the temperatures and other winds that are prevailing in that place. So it is also very important to take care of these, and if there are very many, the kind of climate will be different from that area where it's flat, there are no mountains, there are no hills. The distribution of land and sea and altitude is also very important. Lowland areas will have different climates from highland areas. If you have an area that is composed of thick forest, that is composed of grasslands, the climate and the type of environment in that place will be very different. Now, having understood that, let's look at the climate change and variability, which are other concepts that we need to understand. Like I said, climate change, it refers to the change in that climate that persists for decades or for a longer period of time, arising from either natural processes or persistent anthropogenic changes. So they can climate can be either be as a result of natural processes, or it can be as a result of the human activities that release greenhouse gas into the atmosphere and cause or enhance the greenhouse effect. So climate change is largely attributed to the rise in global temperatures. Climate variability, on the other hand, is the average or is the variation of climate variables, the changes in climate variables from their average state, from what is known to be the average, either above or below the average value. And that is why also sometimes people confuse climate change with climate variability. Sometimes people are not sure whether their area is experiencing climate change or climate variability. And therefore, they tend not to understand or confuse the two. But it's very important to understand in this particular video that while climate change is observed for a longer period of time, or whether while climate change is seen when there is really a shift from the known average for a longer period of time, variability is just the frequent variation of the variables from the average state. And therefore, having understood that, I will come back to continue from here to take you through the other terminologies like climate change risk, also understand variability more in details. I encourage you, of course, to look out to this video and also be able to continue understanding the different concepts of climate change, variability, and risk, and what controls risk, and how we can be able to develop resilient strategies and approaches to mitigate or adapt to climate change. Thank you very much. I'm John Sekajugo, and I look after you in the next videos.